that's the essence of spiritual practice, of sadhana, right? Not to be a nice person, a good person, this, that, follow all the rules. It's to know that you are pure being, untouchable by any event, because all the events are just little happenings in you. And just talking about it, we get pretty blasted into that space.
Yeah. Welcome to a Curious Yogi podcast. I'm your host, Bobby, joined by living masters and awakening friends. We're here to illuminate your practice as we explore what it means to walk the yogi's path, unfold peace from within, and live the vision of oneness. I'm so delighted you're here. Now let's get curious. Hey, Curious Yogis, welcome back. Oh my goodness, season 4. This is the 76th episode, and it feels as fresh as ever. So I recorded this episode back in March in India, and I'm sharing it with you from Sweden. And I've got to say, if you've ever spent an extended period of time in India doing your sadhana, immersing yourself in the spiritual essence of India, and then return to the structure, cleanliness, and, I'm sorry to say it, spiritual wasteland of a patriarchal, capitalistic society, it is a struggle. I've been to India 12 or 13 times now. I've spent so much time there. And every single time I leave, it's the same challenge for me. I so need and crave satsangis. It's so easy to disappoint oneself with directing the attention towards the void, which is living in a spiritually flat world. And I will say I'm talking about spirituality as a perspective, as a way of viewing the world, as a way of seeing the oneness, life in all, not as a religious dogma, not as New Age foo-foo, but as lived, applied spirituality. So that's why I'm more inspired than ever to keep creating the satsang community around me wherever I go. So I will plug right off the bat an upcoming 6-week immersion that starts May 18th. It's 10 hours live course material, primarily online, and I've created this Living Yoga Sadhana 6-week immersion so that we can continue to live our yoga sadhana out here, I'm quoting, quote unquote, where it matters, in the quote unquote real life. The sadhana really, if we're not doing the sadhana in the day-to-day life, like, what does it matter if we sit on our meditation cushion every morning or do our yogasana practice on this little 6-foot long mat if we're not practicing yoga in the way we are living each moment? So I'll drop the link in the show notes to join the immersion. And as always, Patreon members receive a discount. So if you've been listening to the show for a while, please head on over to patreon.com/acuriousyogipodcast and support the show for as little as $8 a month. This helps me keep the show alive. And thanks to the amazing current 8 members, that's right, I'm celebrating all you 8 members. You know who you are. Thanks to you, I'm able to upgrade my recording and editing software so that I can be more efficient and save my tech challenge self and hopefully get you more higher quality episodes in the calendar for your sadhana, for your inquiry, for your jigyasa, your curiosity. So honestly, if you've been getting value from the show for some time, please become a Patreon. It's a super beautiful way to support these conversations. And speaking of the conversations, I know you're so ready to hear the wisdom of this week's special guest. But before I introduce him, I just want to share one more takeaway from my trip to India and my time away from the podcast. So when I first arrived in Kulu at the beginning of the trip, with my parents, mind you, which, like Ram Dass says, if you think you're enlightened, go spend a week with your family, which I love that. But when I arrived back in Kulu, I hadn't stopped working or moving or doing. And to be honest, I didn't really stop the whole trip. And in Sweden, there's this saying, it's called hit the wall, which is like their kind of funny way of talking about burnout. And I was like, I really feel I was like running full force towards the wall. I hadn't quite hit it, but I was feeling the fatigue. So between working on Positive Lamps, hosting my parents, hosting the retreat, which, side note, was epic, and I will recap the retreat in a future episode, but the sense of having to do had completely overwhelmed me. So the first satsang back in the ashram, some friends sang a song that Swamiji had wrote a long time ago, I think in the 80s, for Chaitna's mom. Chaitna, you might remember from season 1 of the podcast. And it had the most simple title and this line that was sung over and over again. And it became such a great Mahavakya for me in the past 2 months. It is enough that oneness is my Lord. You might be thinking, oneness is your Lord. And I'm like, yes, it is enough. The sadhana is enough. The meditation is enough. The oneness is always enough. Whatever life is bringing and throwing at me, whatever I feel like I'm doing or leading or not doing or creating or uncreating, it is the oneness, the very oneness at the back of everything that I do. And I offer everything that I do to that oneness. Yoga karmasu kaushalam. Begin, establish ourselves in that state of yoga, and then skillful action always follows. And Dick and I touch on this a little bit in the talk today. And most importantly, Nishkam Karm Yoga. Know who is the one doing the action. Practice that non-doership. It is the very oneness. It is the very self. It is the very pure being that we discussed today that is at the back of it. So the action which unfolds, I just know that it is enough, that I know the oneness, I remember the oneness, I offer all the action, all the results of the action to that which is the Lord of it all. So I can release that stress or sense of doing anything right or wrong, too much, too little. It's all the power of the very self. So that's my power right now as I navigate the choppy waters of being back in Sweden as a newcomer, of struggling with this language. Oh my gosh, the Swedish tax system is like, Ram Dass said, if you want to think you're enlightened, go spend a week with your family. Okay, I did that. Check, I'm not enlightened. And I'm going to add a caveat to that. If you think you're enlightened, go spend a week with the Swedish tax agency. I am so not enlightened. But I'm really, wanting to create something authentic and spiritual for myself, for this new community I have here in Sweden, but without creating any bondage. So that Mahavakya, it is enough that oneness is my Lord, is amazing. And I'm so thankful to share it with you. I'm thankful to share my journey with you. And it is the perfect time for me to revisit this episode with Dikpal and edit it and send it on over to you. So this conversation is with Mr. Richard Taylor, who became Dikpal as I know him after meeting Swami Shyam in 1973. Dick grew up in Edmonton. We have that Albertan connection. And he ended up with an MBA, was a professor of management in 2 universities, the assistant secretary to the Cabinet of Government of Canada in Ottawa. And it was there that Dikpal met Swamiji in 1973. And as he says in our talk, the next 50 years after that means doing this. And by this, he means his sadhana, coming back and forth to India and finally living semi-permanently and becoming a director of the International Meditation Institute. 50 years. That is so long to be meditating. Dikpal shares his extraordinary experience of, and I'm quoting again, having it all, contemplating the meaning of life, and questioning how come I'm still miserable. Who can relate to that? I'm sure some of the curious yogis listening can relate to that. Dikpal shares his wisdom gained from a lifetime of living and studying with an enlightened being, the Sat Guru, which is the real deal, and his incredible expression from a lifetime of experimenting and contemplation in his own meditation practice. So much here. I know you'll love it, and I'm so happy to kick off season 4 with this incredible yogi and the inspiration to keep inquiring into the nature of who we truly are. So thanks again for all the love, for being here, for sharing this yogi's path with me. And here's Dikpal. See you on the other side. Welcome to a Curious Yogi podcast, Dikpal. It's such a super fun and great honor to just get to spend an hour with you.
Well, it's exciting.
Yeah, it's going to be great. And as I was telling you before, like this podcast kind of project or happening, it's been such a fulfilling thing for me, or such a value add for me for my sadhana, because I get to sit with, in my opinion, wise people like you, especially, I know like the path is not linear, and yet how lucky I am in my life to have so many wise yogis that have walked this path few steps ahead of me, so then I have so many questions. So I feel really thankful just that you're sharing your time with me today, so I can ask some questions on behalf of me and behalf of all the curious yogis that are listening.
Yeah, okay.
So just lots of appreciation to start.
It's a fantastic project.
Great. So I think just to start, I will introduce you to the listeners, but even for me, it's like I've known you for many years now, but I don't know we won't go to too much of your details of your 80-something years of being on this planet, but I like to start by just asking, did you always know that this was going to be your kind of path? Did you feel as a young person you were disillusioned? Like, what were the kind of key points that brought you to now living your life in the Himalayas as a meditator?
Yes. Interesting question. No, absolutely not. Didn't have a clue. When I look back, I wasn't really that normal, but I didn't know that I wasn't that normal. And I had no searching questions, and I didn't have a sense of inner discontent, and I wasn't looking for anything. I mean, other than what you look for, I liked reading books and going to the library and riding along on my bicycle, but I can relate, because I'm going to relate a few key incidents. So I remember a key incident. It doesn't sound very key, but I used to ride my bicycle. I was probably about 10 or 11, and I'd ride to the library and I'd get a book, a couple of books, maybe Nancy Drew, or maybe some Western saga, or something. I just loved reading. Once I tuned into reading, I just liked reading. So and then on my way home, I used to stop at Lansdowne's grocery store and get a jelly donut. And I remember once I stopped at Lansdowne and got a jelly donut, and they were really big, yummy jelly donuts. And then I had a thought, and my thought was, if I continue stopping at Lansdowne's and getting a jelly donut every time I get a book, I'm going to get fat. So I stopped going to Lansdowne's and getting a jelly donut. And I would say that's my first sort of self-absorbed thought I ever had, where I actually thought about myself, right? And nothing much. I was reasonably bright, nice parents, English descent, growing up in a nice neighborhood in Edmonton. I was kind of bright, so I skipped a grade here and there, and so I wasn't sort of as hip as some of the guys in my class and all that stuff. But I was fine. And then I went through high school, and I was like most boys. Mostly I thought about girls. So girls, and I'd play some sports with my friends, and I'd read my books, and I just lived basically. That's about it. Went to university. I was good at math, so I took honors math, and then in my second year it got pretty boring. It just was so complicated. So I took off to California with a friend of mine, and we tripped around to avoid the Edmonton winter, and then we came back, and an old English teacher of mine said, well, okay, you could take economics. So I took economics. I didn't even know what economics was, but I got a BA. You had to get a BA. And then, like most of my buddies, you had to go out and work. So I went out and worked. So I sold Coca-Cola for a year and a half. I was a Coca-Cola special salesman. And I saved up my money, and I went tripping around Europe on my little motor scooter with my friend, and we went all over the place. And we discovered the wonders of Moroccan kif on this journey. And so we're sitting in a hotel in our flat in Earl's Court in England, and my friend said, Taylor, you got to do something, or you're going to become a bum, and just wander around Europe. And I said, oh yeah, Roskin. I was quite blissful, why should I do that? He said, no, you have to. You should take an MBA. And I said, well, what's that? He said, well, it'll be good for you. It's more practical than just economics. I said, okay. So he gave me an application form, and I applied, and I got in. And it turned out I was really good at it. And I didn't have to work very hard, and I really got good marks. And back then MBAs were worth pretty good. Like, you got out, and I was, on the dean's list, and these companies were going to come and offer me a lot of money, and I got offered a PhD fellowship at Stanford. But an incident, now my second incident, next to the jelly donut incident, happened. And I was with my girlfriend, and, we were in a lovely romantic sort of space, and, that kind of thing. And so that's what it looked like. But actually, inside I was working on trying to figure out where the glitch was in my computer program, because I was modeling a production process at the time. And so, just like with the jelly donut, I had a thought. And the thought was, if I continue like this, like just math and trying to optimize processes and thinking about all this stuff, even when you're in the most sweet space with your girlfriend, that's not going to be good. Like, before it was, I'm going to get fat, I should eat the jelly donuts. This was, I'm going to miss out on an awful lot of human, the richness of being a human being, which I never thought about before. I didn't miss that. I'm supposed to be feeling a lot of love and beauty and joy, and I'm just cranking this math. And I like cranking math, but it was pretty limited. But then I looked back long after, and I thought, well, that was kind of a pivotal moment, because then I didn't quite know what I was doing anymore. And then I got offered all these jobs with lots of money and all that stuff, but I kind of wasn't interested. But I didn't know how to actualize that other part of me, but I just knew that I wasn't that interested in that. So all my buddies were going off on their big paying jobs, and I really hadn't accepted anything. And I wasn't even worried about it. I was just sort of, nothing interested me. It was sort of like when my girlfriend's dad back in, when I was in my undergrad said, well, do you ever think of getting married to Enid, right? And I thought, no, I wasn't thinking I didn't want to get married. Marriage was sort of about as foreign to me as like the man on the moon. So was what was the thing I was hoping to get if I didn't dwell in all this math? So I didn't know. So I got offered a the plum job that you could possibly imagine, visiting professor in the School of Economics in Jamaica.
Wow.
And it was Ford Foundation, so they were paying me a lot of money. And the rest of the guys were all black Marxists in my economics department. They were probably making about as fifth as I was. And so I'm down there, teaching fairly wealthy kids how to sell more toothpaste, and I didn't have to hardly work at all. 12 hours a week teaching, and I had a sports car, and I was scuba diving, and I bought a great big bag of weed down in the central Kingston, and it sounded like paradise, right? I kind of had it all. Anything I could have imagined, which would be far out, and the lovely girls there and all that kind of stuff. And so the interesting thing was, I was abjectly miserable. and the worst part was, like, it was bad enough not to be happy, but to have got everything that you thought would make you happy and find out, holy shit, I'm not happy at all. And so then I started getting to that place where you asked about earlier. I started questioning, well, what's going on? I mean, what like, and the fact that, like, I respected the guys in the economics department much more than me. I mean, they at least stood for something, an equality or something or other. I didn't stand for anything, I didn't know myself. I didn't know, I hadn't, I could talk cleverly at, cocktail parties or something about ethics and that, but I didn't really have any. I was living, right? So I was pretty lost. And then I got into existentialism. I found these books, and there were some guys talking about how I felt, that what is the meaning of it all, and why do you feel like you're separate from me, alien from everyone, and all that stuff. It's called, crise d'identité and existential crisis, all that stuff. I found that out later. So then, on my way up, then I thought, well, I'll use my great brain. I still thought it was a great brain, even though it was giving me no happiness at all. But I thought, well, maybe I can use my intelligence to help humanity. I'll work for the government, and I'll create wonderful programs and do stuff. And right around that time, like, all these things just dropped on me like from heaven. The Jamaican job, like, how, your dream job. Now the dream job in the government came. I got offered this job. There was this beautiful guy named Michael Pitfield, who was the Deputy Secretary to the Cabinet of Canada in Plans and Priorities. Later became the Secretary of the Cabinet. Top job. Young, brilliant guy. And I went up for an interview, and I really connected with the guy. Unbelievably. So he said, come work with me and my personal staff. We're advising the Prime Minister on long-term stuff. So I went up, and on my way up, I took a little detour through San Francisco so I could go up and see my parents. And then I met this guy, was sitting in a cafe and still contemplating, what is the meaning of life and how come I'm so miserable, right? And I met this guy, and he was a Zen Buddhist, but he had been, anyway, he was familiar with transcendental states of consciousness, let us say. Before he became a Zen Buddhist, he was involved in other stuff. So suffice to say, we went into the mountains above Berkeley and sat, and I had a beautiful experience. And instead of everything being separate from me, and instead of feeling that there was no meaning to life, everything was just one with me. And the meaning of life was that God was shining through everything, and beauty was shining through everything. And it was all knit together so beautifully, perfectly. And I had known it, but I forgot that I knew it. And I said to the guy, I know this. And he said, well, that's right. I said, but I was a little baby when I knew this. And I totally forgot that I knew this. And he said, yeah, that's right. And I said, well, how come I forgot? He said, well, that was innocence. You were innocent. You were wide open to it. It's the truth. But now, that innocence gets lost. And I said, so is it all downhill from there? And he said, no, you have to develop the ability to see forms and work with the world and all that stuff, but then you got to regain the innocence. So suddenly there was some point, something one could do. You could regain the innocence, and you could see the truth behind the appearances, and that truth was so beautiful. Okay, that lasted for several hours. Then I was back to being alienated Dickie, and but I knew it was there. There was the overwhelming sense that that's true, that's real. So after that, I was looking for that. And, then I started reading guys like Alan Watts and, Ram Dass and those kinds of guys. And I was really lucky. My boss in the PCO, who I came up for to do advanced systems theories with, I said, geez, I'm not very interested anymore. I'm more interested in higher states of consciousness. He said, oh, good, but read this book, Perennial Philosophy by Aldous Huxley. How everybody all over, in all cultures and religions, everybody's looking for that. And so, it's a long story. Worked there for a year, worked as a professor for a couple of years in the university, always looking for that experience of oneness, that sense of the perfection and beauty and everything. Not really finding it, but getting glimpses here and there, knowing it was there, and yet the sense of not finding it and the kind of wasteland of normal, you're born, you live, and you die, sort of. Yes, I guess you can do some good things for some people, but it all seemed like Band-Aids, And then I went back to some ashram I'd visited just through some happenstance. I thought, well, maybe something will happen there. And anyway, I met somebody, and they said, look, if you like this particular yogi you met, I know a guy you might really like. His name's Swami Shyam. So I went to the little house where a few of his devotees were staying because he'd gone back to India, and a lady started talking to me about what he said, and boom, like everything that she said that he said, and I can't even remember the words now, it was like, oh, this guy knows what I'm talking about. This guy's saying stuff that's absolutely ringing true in the deepest level of my being, and he's there, and he's not a philosopher that knows about it. He's living it, for God's sake. And I just knew within a minute. I knew that was it. And I remember I had the thought, hey, the war's over. It's just the mopping up operation now. Like, it does exist. This guy knows it. I know he knows it. And he'll help me come to learn it. And basically that's it. I mean, the 50 years after that are sort of doing this. And doing this means, because maybe your listeners don't know, so I ended up going back and forth to, we call it an ashram in India, but actually it's a whole bunch of people just living nearby this sage, this Swami Shyam, who I think maybe many of your other interviewees have spoken about, listening to the guru. He was a guru. He is a guru, a sat guru. A sat guru means he's not just a guru that removes the darkness of your ignorance about how to fix your car or how to use a paintbrush, right? He removes your ignorance about sat. And sat is the truth, the real truth, the big truth, the truth that never changes, and other stuff like that. So after about several years, I'd saved some money, and then I got an inheritance, and it's pretty inexpensive to live here. So I ended up coming to India and pretty much hanging out here for a lot of the time, and started helping out with the administration of the ashram, and here I am talking to you.
Beautiful. I think it's really interesting, like one point that you said in your story about that moment where you sort of realized you've achieved kind of everything, the pinnacle of what a human being wants to achieve, the job, the place, the sports car, the money, the girls, and then yet there was still a sense in you that said, actually, this doesn't bring me satisfaction. So whether people in the world either reach that point and still feel the dissatisfaction, or they're striving towards something feeling like I'll only be happy when, so it's kind of suffering on either side.
Yep.
It's kind of like sort of the time memorial predicament of thinking that we'll gain that sense that you expressed when you had that first meditation experience, that we'll get that from something outside of ourselves.
Well, yeah, because nobody ever told me anything else.
Exactly, but then it's like, if that's what the world is impressing on us, and yet there's the rare people, those that are listening, I'm sure, and myself included, that had that sense, okay, actually let me go to find what will bring me satisfaction, that experience of remembering. And then when you talked about the meditation, how you had that sense that you had always known it, but you forgot it.
And that's such an interesting one. Like when you hear the truth like that, first of all, when I had that experience of perfection, and later when I heard what Swami said, like, it's kind of like when you hear it, you know it in the deepest depths of your being, and there's the sense that, like, when somebody tells you about, I don't know, how an electron works or something, it's fascinating, and you learn about it. But it's not like you always knew. It's interesting information. But when the experience of that comes, or when Guru comes, it's not like that. It's not like he's giving you a piece of new information. Wow, oh no kidding. It's like, he's telling you stuff that you already knew. He's saying, you're actually already perfect. You're a pure, free, divine being at your very core. All of this is already that which you're looking for. It's just that you're seeing it wrong. You're not open to the divinity which is shining through everything. Call it divinity, call it pure awareness, call it God. There's a lot of names for it, spirit, but that perfection, that sense of perfect satisfaction, that you don't need anything more. You'll never need anything more. It's not like, well, wow, it's all fantastic. Got the sports car, this, that, but I could have a nicer car, or my girlfriend could love me more. Or, it's like there couldn't be anything more perfect, and it's not, because all the attributes of it are sort of maxed out. Well, now I got a Lamborghini, and I got the hottest movie star on the planet on my arm. No, it's like, it's intrinsically perfect. It's always been that.
I'm going to ask a question, because it's kind of like, even when you're speaking about the perfection, for me, that also resonates as that truth. But what is it in a human being that, if it's all perfection, what is it that covers that perfection and makes us seek outward, seek towards something else, like that sense of covering?
Yeah, good question. Fantastic. Like, if I am, like, at my core of my being, I am already that perfection. In fact, there's just, I'll jump a little philosophically, but there's just one perfect, beautiful being, God. And so we are all just emanations of that. Really, we are that. Then, if we are that, how come we don't know it, right? That's what you're saying. What covers that knowledge? Well, two things. First of all, if you have a human body and mind and intellect, you have a little survival machine, okay? Now, let's say you are a human body. We know that you aren't really that, but let's say that, okay, I'm Dick, okay? So Dick pops out of the womb, and he's a little baby, doesn't know anything. Maybe he's having that vision of oneness for a while. Then he starts to know a name, and a lot of learning comes that allows Dick to stay alive as Dick. And if that learning didn't come, Dick wouldn't stay alive as Dick. And so it seems to me that the fact that we're all here in these particular forms, I'm Dick, you're Bobby, means that our genetics, passed on from thousands of generations, like our genetic codes were genetic codes that managed to keep replicating themselves. They had some good tricks that let them stay alive in the jungle a long time ago, and then, let themselves not get wiped out back when the, Macedonians were massacring the Persians. We hung in. Our genetic codes hung in. So, but at what cost? And like to stay alive as a human being, it at least seems like I have to know I'm separate from you. I can't think I'm really hungry, I'm going to give you a lot of food and that's going to do the trick. I've got to get the food. I got to be separate from you. The reality may be that there's only one being and we're both that being. But if this body doesn't think it's separate for the purposes of keeping itself alive, it'll die. I mean, to make it very simple, and I could go on and on about why. So we have to learn to take forms to be there, to be real. There's a truck speeding down the road. I'm about to walk out into the road. If I think the truck is only space and I'm only space and I don't have to worry about the truck, I walk out and the truck hits me. Nothing really happens to the pure being which is immortal, but Dick doesn't last anymore. So I got to at least pretend that truck's real, and I got to pretend that I'm real and separate from the truck. Okay, but that pretense, when practiced hour by hour, day by day, week by week, year by year by the little kid, and never anybody telling him, well, it's just a pretense. You're really just pure free awareness already. You're not even separate from anything. It's just a little illusion that's creating this fun imaginary form called Dick or Bobby. No one ever tells you that. And all your senses are telling you, well, there's Bobby and there's Dick, and if you have more money, then you can buy more stuff, and I like stuff, and it doesn't feel nice when I'm out with my friends. I have no money and I feel small, and all the things that are attributes of you as a human being. So you're navigating as an individual person. So these overlays, which are just imaginary ways of looking at things which allow you to deal with them, they start to become more and more real and true. And pretty fast. Even if when you were a tiny, tiny baby, it was pretty obvious that everything was just one beautiful field of your own awareness. Pretty soon it's a bunch of separate stuff. You're a separate person. You feel good from this, you feel bad from that. Somebody likes you, you feel good. Somebody doesn't like you, feel bad. That's natural, happening in the nervous system. It's all natural. It's all natural. But it sucks because where's the truth you can hang on to that doesn't change in all of that? And so the cover is the sense of otherness. The cover is the sense of the reality of the world and the importance of the world. Yeah, I can pretend the world's real and I can treat some things as important and others not, but that's all just happening in that pure awareness which I really am in truth, which I was even before I popped into a form manifestation, which will be there even when this form manifestation drops. That's just going to keep going on. But when I identify myself as the form, and I forget about myself as that pure being that I am, then that's the cover. That is the cover. But it's as simple as that. Take off the cover and you're who you always have been. Just shining, pure, divine being. That's it.
Yeah, when you're speaking about dropping off the clothes, and I think that's an analogy that's been used in the Bhagavad Gita. Just when these clothes are worn out, we just discard them and go on to the next. And that actually kind of makes sense, and it's kind of, more commonly spoken, at least like in the yoga world now, that I know I'm not this body. Like there is that sort of innate sense that says, I know I'm not just this blood and bones and kind of tissue that's changing. It's kind of like, it makes sense to many people. It does make sense. Yeah. And yet there is that fear of death, which I guess, like you're saying, it comes from the survival mechanism of the human being that wants to stay alive. So
well, I think, if you take away the fear part, but the aversion to death, the strong aversion to death, we're here because our genetic code and our the conditionings in our systems had a strong aversion to death. Our old, some other old ancestors, they didn't have that. So their progeny aren't around because they didn't last enough to have progeny, or you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So aversion to death is fine. Fear means I think that I am going to die when the body dies. So the body's aversion of death, suddenly I think that's, I'm going to die. No, I don't die. But the body might die, and the body quite correctly will take proper action. I remember there was one happening with our Guruji. They were shooting a film out on the coast of California, and the guy who was the producer of the film, they'd ask Swami to answer questions as a guru, and he was doing it on a beach, and it turned out the beach was private. And a guy came along, the guy who owned the beach, and he was a really heavy guy. And he came with his friend, the sheriff, who was even heavier, and they both had guns. And Swami saw them coming. And he right away turned to his right-hand man, Dan, and he said, "This is not nice. We go now." And he immediately walked away from that scene very rapidly. You could say, well, Swamiji was a realized being. He knew that, that it's all God, right? But he also knew that the sense in his system that knew that was not to be entertained, these such bad people, was also God. And the power in his legs taking him away was also God. So he didn't have to pretend to be fearless. He was fearless, but he correctly didn't want to, the body goes for food that's healthy and good. It's naturally averse to food that's sickly and bad. So, so I just lost the track there. Mm-hmm. So fear of death. Fear is when you get identified with the aversion to death. But aversion to death's natural and good. Essential, really.
It's such a subtle distinction, though, that I think is so important to remember. That nature is happening, nature is going along, and yet the sort of power of the practice, which I guess we can start to talk about meditation and spirituality and having Guru's vision to sort of guide that waking state, it goes towards that spaciousness that you're speaking about and away from that sense of identification, from fear, from smallness, from contractedness. And is it that, we over weeks, days, months, years, decades now, that just as, from little Dickie the boy who said you're a Dickie, you're an individual, you're this and that, through the practice of meditation, through the application of this vision of oneness, of this way of perceiving everything as God, we're sort of reshaping the perspective from that individual fear-stricken, angsty person in Jamaica to the one that actually can see life happening and unfolding, but with that vision, with that spaciousness, with that sense of peace inside, because it's really, that's what I want, is the peace,
Of course, and you have it already, as you pointed out. You are it. So if it seems like you don't, then that's an indicator that you're starting to think that you're an individual person, and maybe that individual person has some problems, and you are going to be affected by those. But really, you'll never be affected by those, because who you are is pure awareness, space, in which Bobby appears, Dick appears, problem appears, solution appears, and you're just you, all the time, just you. And then you've come to know, first through the teachings of Guru, you are pure. You are always free. You're not free only when stuff works well. You're not free only when there's no physical bondage on you. You're always free. And so then when Bobby, if she breaks her ankle, she's not free to run around. But you are freedom itself. So that's just a little happening in you. So then nothing can touch you. And you say, well, how does that arise? And you're right. I mean, it arises from first hearing that is the truth of your own being, and hearing it from an authority that you totally come to believe knows. So even though your direct experience as yet might not be that all the time, someone's saying, you are that. So then you say, well, if I'm not feeling like that, if I'm not experiencing like that, then something has to shift. And what needs to shift is where you're perceiving from. And that's why the meditation works. It's not just meditation's a magic formula, and if you meditate, like, what are you meditating on? And what you're meditating on, or what you're meditating, the goal is that when you can let go of all those things that have covered you, I am Bobby, I have this relation, it should be like this, it shouldn't be like that. When all those, those are arising, you notice them arising, but then who's noticing? That who is noticing isn't the one that it's happening to. That's the one, you call it the witness self, you call it the observer, the watcher. And that's just your own awareness. And then you hear your guru say, you are that awareness. You're not the changing forms. They're a manifestation within you, but you're just that awareness. And then you meditate, and suddenly your view, your actual experience changes from I'm Bobby and I'm looking out at the world to, oh, I'm just pure, even, perfect space of awareness. And there is no motion for me. Motion arises, stays, and drops within me, but I'm just me through the whole thing. So now you know. But then you start moving around and you have to do stuff, and that awareness slips away. Satguru is the one, the realized being is the one, that awareness, which we all are all the time, that doesn't slip from their own awareness. In other words, yes, I am always that, but I get deluded by thinking that I'm this. So that's the essence of spiritual practice, of sadhana, right? Not to be a nice person, a good person, this, that, follow all the rules. It's to know that you are pure being, untouchable by any event, because all the events are just little happenings in you. And just talking about it, we get pretty blasted into that space.
Yeah, and I'm like thinking about, like it was perfect because I wanted to ask you about sadhana, and that here you are at this phase in your life, here I am at this different phase in my life, and yet we've both been attracted to that knowledge, to that truth, and to the practice of knowing it through that sadhana, that day, that constant reminder of whether we hear it through Guru, whether we speak it with each other, whether we close our eyes and actually experience it within ourselves. Like there is that attraction to it that keeps going. I think so often it's like we have to sort of tick things off the box, like, next week, self-realization. But it's like,
There won't be any more ticks after that one.
Yeah. But it's like, the sadhana does start to become slowly, I feel, in my, 10 or 11 or so years of meditating daily, I have started to realize that the sadhana is kind of always going on when the being inside is attracted to that.
Yep.
And then there's many people that, the karma is different, I don't know, they aren't attracted to that space. And
yeah, interesting point. They're not consciously attracted to that space. I think that every object that attracts, really, when you get it and you feel happiness for a moment or a little while, it's actually your own true nature, which is happiness, that kind of gets uncovered for a moment. I finally got what I'm looking for. I can relax for a minute. In that relaxation, it's you. It's you, pure happiness itself that bubbles up. But pretty soon it's, oh, well, it might have a defect. It might have a flaw. That other guy's got a better one, and then suddenly your mind comes up and it covers that pure happiness again. Everybody really wants happiness. Even the guys that are looking like they just want to, get more money or this or that. But why are they doing it? Somewhere inside, they learnt somewhere that if they did that, what would they get? Satisfaction. I mean, that's why one of the most fantastic, or not, one of the delightful things Swamiji said, remember, once to that millionaire, he was saying, well, Swami, I mean, I know you're spiritually attained, but look, there's a lot of things money can have. I got this, I got this, I got this, I got this, I got this. And Swami said, you remember, he said, but I got something you don't have. He said, well, what could you possibly have? I could get it. He said, no, not so easily. What do you have that I don't have? He said, I have enough. I mean, what a profound thing. The sense that you have enough.
Yeah.
Because when you're not needing something more, then you can relax. And when you can relax, then who you really are kind of can shine out of you, because you're not busy trying to get something.
It does ring so true that, the deepest desire of each and every human being is to be content, to be happy, to be peaceful, to be fulfilled. Why? Because if that's our own true nature, of course, that's our deepest desire. But like you said before about the covering or anything, but that is beautiful. And when actually contemplating on that, it's like, then there is actually no sense of division. Because I can see even somebody maybe I disagree with, or like the sheriff and the beach owner. It's there's still the sense, the sharpness of the intellect that discerns the situation, but it's not saying one is wrong, one is right. It's saying, okay, I'm going over here, but that sheriff, that beach owner, they also wanted to feel happy and content and complete.
They just thought that by being really mean and experiencing their own power, that would give them a momentary sense of satisfaction, because your truth is there is divine power in you. And usually the guys who are the most like that are the guys that have been powerless at some time or other, and they just want, I'm powerful, I can make people do what I want, so that they get their rocks off that way, because they need to get their rocks off.
But it is interesting that when we can recognize that divine power is there, permeating each and every being, permeating each and every manifestation, it's like it gives such an expansive vision into how one can move through the world as this apparent individual navigating. But there's a less tightness, contraction, you're right, I am wrong, fight. Doesn't mean that we don't take action, but to take action from that state of like we were
Yoga
talking.
star.
Yes, like we were talking about today. Yoga star, to be established in that vision, and then action happens. Rather than, I'm an individual, me, I need to do something to achieve yoga or to achieve peace or to achieve that. It's like this sort of shift. Like, I kind of have the vision in my head, you know, like when a volcano happens underground, this tectonic shift. It's just a shift, and like the whole volcano comes.
Yeah.
It's somehow just shifting from this vision of division to separateness, shifting our perception to the vision of oneness.
Well, and you know, it's. I mean, it's not even that. I mean, to me, it's sort of like, imagine yourself as Bobby in the movie, and I'm Dick, right? So you're over there, and I'm over here, and I mean, from this perspective, that's how it's working. And now, you know, you pull up, you're looking at it all from a satellite up there, and Dick and Bobby and the whole room and the whole area, they're just part of one field of your vision. So it's just different perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the perspective of, and this is going to sound a little interesting at first, but the perspective of your eye having no location, it's almost a non-perspective perspective. But when you don't locate who you are as anywhere in particular, then there's no sense of difference from anything else, because you're not in a particular location from which there are other
Mm-hmm.
locations.
Mm-hmm.
There's no otherness. There's no other than you anymore. While on the body level, the body's working fine, and yep, that guy's other than me and he wants to kill me, and I should get the hell out of here before he does, right? No problem, just do it.
Yeah. I love how you're making these subtle distinctions, you know, about placing the eye in that place where there is no. Because if I say I am seeing with the vision of oneness, I'm still stuck in the sense of I as the individual perceiving things.
If you are still stuck.
Yeah, well, I think I've still got a little ways to go. But then I think about that analogy of like Guru is saying like, here's the food, here is the knowledge. He's presenting it on a sort of silver platter. He's giving the knowledge. But like you said before, I am the one that has to eat it and digest it and churn it for myself. So I want for you to shed a little bit more light on that experience of us understanding that for ourselves within our own experience, that place of the watcher, of the knower. Like, how do we experience that for ourselves?
Best, most simple, and totally advocated as the number one way is meditation. You gotta meditate. Meditation, I mean, there's many ways to think about it, but the essential is that you are letting go of your individual perspectives. You are, you know, I mean, I'm sure your listeners have heard about meditation and how to do it and all that stuff. So, I mean, why are you doing it? Well, as you started out, if you're one being, truly, then how come you're feeling like you're an individual? What covers that sense of being one being, and what covers it is the identification with body, identification with mind, big one. And let's go with mind. So, you know, so I got a mind. So my mind gives the first person pronoun to this body. I am Dick. You, second person pronoun, are Bobby. They, all those people out there, are the other guys out there, right? So now we got three. And I believe that that's true. Then there's the attributes of those, you know. They are not good. I am good. They should become good. I will teach them so they will become good. Now we don't just have separate groups, we got action that has to happen. And, I've got to pick up, I will go and do this, right? Or I'll help feed people, or I will go and, if I'm a terrorist, I'll go and kill those guys because their ideology is different than me. But it's all like I'm an individual. So I'm going to locate myself as a person. So when I'm meditating, you may use mantra, which means you just settle that part of your mind down that's sucking you in all the time. And then the natural happening is that if your mind's not catching you all the time, because it's not presenting the reality of those thoughts because you've engaged it in a mantra, then what's behind the mind, the pure intelligence which you are, is going to start to be noticeable more because your attention's getting taken away from it by the mind. And of course, the other way is the way of Mahavakyas, which is the mind is saying, I got a problem, I got to do this, got to do that. And then I'm saying, just a minute, like, okay, that's Dick and he has a problem, but I'm not Dikpal. Now, there's an interesting statement. This is the mind of Dikpal, Dick, saying, I'm not Dikpal. But actually, if you say that, and then you, like an actor almost, you identify with that and say, okay, well, if I'm not Dikpal, then who am I here exactly? If I'm not this form, I'm still knowing. I'm something that's knowing. And so you use that. It's called the method of inquiry. It's the curious yogi. But be curious about the right stuff. Mm-hmm. Be curious about who are you really? What's the real nature of experience? Is it really true that some are bad and some are good in that? Or is it just a relative truth? What's really true? What's the truth that never changes its truthfulness, right? Is there any place you can hang your hat? Jesus said, build your house on a rock, right? Is there any place you can dwell? You can put your identification that's not going to change. And there is. And that's pure awareness, pure being. And on the physical level or on the understanding level, another one we've been talking about is space. The essence of existence. And all division in that is just arbitrary. I divide up Bobby and Dick because that's a natural survival technique, but it's actually one continuous field of, you can notice it, Watch a movie, the guy in the movie thinks he's separate and the other guy's separate, but for you, it's just all one screen. It's all just one light. There's no real division. You're making them divided. Oh yeah, that guy's over there. I can see the contour of his body and all that. But you're making that division. You don't have to make that. A little kid can't make that division. He can't discern one object from another. So you just, when you're meditating, you let go of holding on to individual position. And when you do, then who you are, which is just the awareness, just the intelligence that allows the mind and the brain to do all that, now it's just left shining. But it's not really it, it's you. There you are. But you got no boundary, it's just you. You don't have anything to do. You don't even act. You just are. And then it really helps to have some authority to have told you to confirm what that is. Satguru, not the particular man who calls him Sadguru, although I'm sure he's a wonderful fellow, but some guru, some person, some holy man, some person who has attained a height in this area, or hopefully, if you're lucky, who has totally realized who he is. And they tell you, yes, this is the truth. Your sense that you've always been and that you always will be, and that the sense that you will disappear is just sort of an anomaly happening in the body, that's true. And then you read the scripture, whether it's, whatever your scripture happens to be, it's going to talk about the life, the awareness is eternal. Not just it lasts forever, it's out of time, it's not even part of time. And that which you're knowing when you're meditating, when you let go of the sense of individual identification, is out of time. Then we learn from the philosophy, there's a way of understanding that time and space are a creation of that being, But the being itself, who you are, is just you. So how do you let go? I mean, that's how you get there. You got to meditate. Because meditation can open that direct experience, maybe a little bit at first, just a sense of peace, You don't really know what it is. It seems to be a bit fleeting, but you notice you feel more relaxed. Why? The sense of truth and reality and importance of all those big worldly happenings has just been kind of erased 1%, 2%. But you keep going to that place, and then you see that from that place, things all kind of seem to fall in place better. When you were thinking about them all the time, it was kind of hard to get it all sorted out. Suddenly, they're kind of all sorting themselves out more and more and more. And your wants and desires start to be a bit less and less and less. Really, you just want to be that which you are.
That needless space.
The needless space.
Beautiful.
What could you need when the whole of eternity is just already you?
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that. I think this is like we've reached the crown jewel.
Oh, yeah.
Which is, like you said, just knowing yourself as that, you as you really are.
Yeah.
And it's really profound and beautiful that it's available to anybody.
Absolutely. Because everybody is that.
Yeah.
There is only that, really.
Yeah. I love it. Well, I've really loved this conversation, Dick. The time has been flying.
Well, we got to be that which we are and which we always like to be.
Definitely, yes. And I just have 2 final questions to wrap up, and they're quick questions. So, and I ask all the guests one or two of these, I call them quick fire questions. So the first one is, Nick, you just actually said something about a Mahavakya, but what's one line of knowledge, one line of wisdom, maybe that you heard from Swamiji, or that we can offer the listeners, one line, one little nugget that one could even do a whole study on or live our whole lives by, but just that one jewel of a quote or a line.
You never truly existed as a form, as a name, as a separate person. You have always been just pure awareness, pure being, pure you.
Beautiful. I love that. Pure awareness, pure being, pure you. Perfect. And then, is there anything at this point in your journey, in your life, in your sadhana, that you're still curious about?
No.
Perfect. So thank you so much. I just love you so much. I appreciate your brilliance, your wisdom. And I just feel so honored to get to spend time with such an incredible being. So thank you.
I suppose I could add that I'm still curious as to whether that play I made in the bridge hand last night was correct or not. Those ones still come.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. My cheeks are like hurting from smiling.
Yeah, we got pretty popped there.
Thanks for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed what you heard, please consider supporting the show at patreon.com/acuriousyogi-podcast. And please leave a review. It really helps the show reach more people. Let's stay curious, connected, and keep walking the path together. In total delight, this is Bobby signing off until next time.